And welcome into the Young Dad Podcast, whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, changing dirty diapers, or maybe, just maybe, you're taking a few minutes for yourself, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at. Thanks for being here, and thanks for telling a friend. Today's guest is Austin, a visionary leader in teen behavioral health and addiction recovery. He's the founder and CEO of Clearfork Academy, the go-to residential treatment center in Texas for teens battling mental health challenges and substance use. So some great work going on there. With over 15 years of hands-on experience, Austin combines counseling, ministry, and faith to guide teens and families toward healing and hope. If you're a parent, an educator, or someone who cares about teens or teens in recovery or teen mental health, this one is 100% for you. So with that, make sure you grab your juice box, grab a snack, and let's jump into the conversation today and welcome Austin to the show. Austin, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much, man. Good morning. Glad to be here.
Of course, man. Excited to have you. To start here, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into this work all those many years ago to doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, I mean, I really thought I was going to be a youth pastor working, in a local church, something like that. And so I did my undergrad in pastoral ministries and went to seminary. And kind of through that, like first part of my career, working with teenagers when the house catches on fire, when they run away, when they get in a fight, whatever. Wasn't using any of that, Greek and Hebrew and theology stuff where I was just asking questions. And so went back and got a master's in counseling. And man, that just led into psych hospitals and case management. And then about 8 years ago, opening up our company now and working with teenagers. So that's kind of the 40,000 foot view.
Very cool. Well, go ahead and give us the boots on the ground view as well.
Yeah.
What's some of that boots on the ground view? So as you're going through, like you went through your undergrad, you're working with teens, and you start doing it, and you're asking these questions, like more and more, like what were the things you were seeing and like going through? You're like, man, I need to do more. Like, what were some of those moments of like, I want to do more than just this.
Yes. Uh, kind of my first experience with residential treatment was working with adults. And so I was clinical director, I was leading a team of clinicians, and I was doing groups every day. I was doing groups and one-on-one therapy with 20s, 30s, 40s, 50-year-olds. And when we're sitting in group, they're all talking about their 13, 14, 15-year-old self, right? And so uh, I got 7, 8, 10 grown men in the room crying because something happened in adolescence. And so this whole idea of Clearfork Academy, right? It's like maybe there was an off ramp in their life to where they didn't carry that pain for 20 years. So, I did that for about 7 years, and then just kind of this aha moment. Michael Gerber calls it the entrepreneurial seizure, and so I was just like, I've got this youth pastor calling, and I've got this like clinical experience. How do I smash those two together and create, this opportunity for kids? And so at the time, there was, 50 adult treatment centers in Texas and 2 adolescent. And so, so there's just this wide gap in treatment availability. And so we tried to fill that gap. And so, now we have 75 to 100 kids in one of our programs at a time. So it's making a big impact.
Very cool. That's awesome. So the first thing that comes to mind here, like for me, is when it comes to working in ministry, but then also working in counseling. There's some clash there, right? There's some things there that don't necessarily agree one with the other both ways. How did you go through that conversation and those conversations when you're pursuing your master's, becoming a counselor, working in counseling, working with people to balance like the faith, the ministry, the counseling, the actual practical approach, actually helping people uh get navigate those conversations.
Yeah, so I think I did all my clinical training in a seminary. So all of my professors had PhDs, worked in local psych hospitals, had like this wealth of actual knowledge working on the unit, working in floors, working with patients. And so every single class was clinically driven, but at the same time, there's this understanding of who God is and what God does. And so I've just really tried to carry that on. And parents ask us all the time, like, okay, tell me about this faith thing that you guys do. And I always just say, like, we're clinicians first, right? We are licensed by the state of Texas. I have letters after my name. I'm bound by these rules and these ethics. And when we venture into faith, that can become unethical to some point, right? If a kiddo has been raped and comes into treatment, I'm not going to go straight there because that's a pain point, right? We're going to build rapport. We're going to build relationship with our kids over time. That's why we have like a 90-day length of stay, because we know we're going to ask them to do things that probably nobody's asked them to do before. And so we build that relationship first, and then inevitably we'll be able to answer the question, AA, God of my own understanding. And so, we're going to answer that in our own particular way and not leave it open-ended.
Definitely. No, I can hear that. That's awesome. It's interesting because I you hear those two things so often. At least I have in my experience. Where it's like, you know, mental health and church. It's like we don't really agree with each other. We don't really get
Well,
along too much.
you
But
know,
I mean, it can.
but if you look at longitudinal studies of lifespan, the people who live the longest have ties to a faith community, right? All the centenarians usually have some sort of faith community that they live close to. So, I mean, there's some scientific evidence there that, you know, is valuable.
Yeah, 100%. There's something there. People who say that you're wasting your time. Don't know why you're doing that. Don't know why you're spending all that time there at that church doing that thing and going through all that stuff. It's like, well, there's some deeper reasons to there. And I really do think at the end of the day, like a lot of like the healing work that you do from the traumatic experience does intertwine with faith and does intertwine with your own faith and growing that in a lot of ways because there's very few ways to heal, right? Like you can heal yourself, you can go through all sorts of treatment and counseling, you can learn how to cope with it. But I think that's all you can really do. You can learn how to cope with it, you can learn how to cope with the pain. But the faith part of it that comes in, that's when you really start to heal. That's when you really start to change. That's when you really start to change your life for the better versus just coping with it. Because then you're just carrying it the same, but you're still going about your day to day the same. You just know how to cope with those feelings and what happened to you or that you did kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So my thoughts there. But you mentioned that there in Texas when you started Clearfork that there was only two other teen centers or adolescent centers. And it's very similar here in Washington State. There's there's so many different places. It feels like there's so many different places, but they're all in one area, right? Like I live on the east side of Washington State, but there's all the other places are in the Seattle area or up on the west side of the state. So they're in the more densely populated area, which makes sense. Densely populated area, you need more resources there, right? But then it comes to it's not even a rural area. We're not even rural over here, but it feels like it with how few options are available. And then those options, they want to put in more barriers to accessing them. Or you have to be
Hmm.
this specific age. You can't just be this age, or you have to meet this criteria. You can't be too aggressive. You can't be to this or not enough that kind of thing, so that we will actually accept you. So when you started Clear Fork Academy, what I mean, I guess what really sets it apart from other treatment centers, other adolescent treatment centers?
Number one, we're, privately owned and operated. I mean, I think that makes a big deal because my thumbprint's on everything we do. And then we kind of set out with this goal of, I knew I wanted to be Christ-centered, right? Like I know of one other in the country that kind of does what we do at a clinical level, but with faith integrated. So that's kind of our one of our differentiators. Number two is I was trained in family systems, and so I see everything as a family system. And so we do a 3-day family intensive about every 6 weeks. And so we know if dad doesn't get better, mom doesn't get better, older or younger sibling doesn't get better, man, the whole family doesn't, that kid's got to abandon ship because that ship is sinking. And in some ways, that's what they've already done by being in treatment or acting out. And so we try to elevate the whole family system and really work hard with that. We're Christ-centered, family-focused, and then we say we're long-term. A lot of the programs are really just driven by a insurance kind of model, and so we opened and were designed for 90 days, not long-term boarding school, but this and not short-term acute hospital care. So somewhere in the middle of 90 days, and so we have a 13-week curriculum that I wrote. And so we follow this value-based curriculum every single week. And so I kind of know what the recipe is that a kid is going to get that treatment. And so a lot of times when you go to other treatment centers, you really don't know what the recipe is. And therapist A and therapist B could be great therapists, but the kid's going to receive completely different treatment because of their philosophy or presentation of how they do therapy and stuff. And so we really just try to encapsulate that, and every single kid gets the same product.
Very cool. That's interesting. I love that. So when it comes to that family system, I heard what you said when about, if this one part of the family's struggling, other kids are going to manage it, right? If siblings struggling, then it's still going to bring down the whole family. If one parent's struggling more than the other, it's going to bring down the whole family. That concept is really interesting to me because you don't think about it, right? And including the whole family, because I bet families don't think about it, right? They're like, oh, I'm sure there's been many occasions where the parents are, here's my kid, fix my kid,
Yeah,
kind of thing, but
yeah.
don't fix the problem that they're coming from, right? That's what I'm trying to say here. But
9 out of 10 families. Here, I want
yeah,
Johnny back with a 4.0 GPA, and I want his haircut and him be ready to be an astronaut.
yeah, but they're not getting down to the root causes, right? They're not getting down to the root causes of what's really going on. And so when you're having that conversation with them, when they come in for that like first intensive that you mentioned, what goes through what kind of conversations are you having with these parents and helping them open their eyes to the root causes of these problems?
Yeah, so it's kind of two-part. I mean, the first part is just really this naivete, right? Or this ignorance. And not in a bad way, but this is kind of generation after generation after generation. Well, grandparents parented this way, mom parented this way, and I'm going to parent this way. And we kind of have this new generation of kids that are kind of bucking the system, if you will. And we can talk about technology, we can talk about a whole bunch of other process addiction type stuff that the kids have. But I think the first part of it is just education. We do a lot of psychoeducation. Here's the mechanism of the brain and the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. And so going into just the whole first day is just really about educating the parent about how you got here, both systemically, biologically, relationally. And then day two is kind of holding up the mirror and going, okay, we just talked about your kid for the last day. Now let's talk about you. How did you grow this plant that's now producing this fruit? Because whether you like it or not, the little ecosphere that this plant grew up in, that's called your home. And what part of your home has been the sunlight and the soil and the moisture to allow this thing to flower, right? And some parents get it immediately, and then some parents are like middle fingers to us, my kid's the problem and I'm never going to change. So it's a spectrum. And so just like we do with our kids is we just build rapport. We build rapport and nurture them along the way. But those are my funnest battles, is to try to help a dad or a mom kind of understand, where their maladaptive patterns of behavior are showing up. And some of them are pretty easy, right? Mom's eating a bottle of Xanax and a case of white wine a month, right? Like we know that that's going to create chaos. And then some of them are really benign and performance driven, and we have to really kind of ease into those situations.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And a lot of parents, it's hard to see the change. It's hard to see the things that need to be changed. Whether it's that blind, some of that ignorance to it, whether it's like naivete as you mentioned, or some of it's chosen too.
Mm,
I definitely can't slip through there. And like you said, it's a spectrum, but you know, parents often know, when there's a problem and where that problem is probably coming from if they take the time to reflect on it. And again, that's a conscious choice that they have to make. They have to make that choice to reflect on it. They have to choose to see it and want to see it because it's there. It's there for most parents, and it's typically a choice that they're not making to see for themselves. At least here in Washington, maybe it's different in Texas. I don't know.
no, parents are the same everywhere. I mean, and we take kids from everywhere. So we've had kids from, Jersey and Washington or Seattle. So
Yeah,
yeah, they're all the same. And I'm no different, right? I'm no different as dad of three kiddos.
yeah.
So
Yeah, no, I can't say if I really want to know why my kid's having a problem, I think the biggest place to look is to where they're spending the most time, right? Where's this issue coming from? What's creating this issue? What's creating the chaos for them? And I bet I don't have to look too far
Hmm.
and imagine too big to stretch my imagination too much to see kind of where it's coming from and why. But going back to the to kids, enough about the parents. Going back to the kids, what are you seeing over the last, I don't know, let's take the last 5 years as a sample here, kinda since the pandemic and stuff, even though Texas wasn't as affected as other places, but you're getting a lot of kids from more impacted places, I'm sure, over the last 5 years. What kind
Hmm.
of issues are you seeing come through your doors with these kids again and again and again and again so often for our teens? Because I think a lot of teens think they're all going through something different, they're all alone, they're all lone wolf in it. They're all like, I'm different because of this, or I'm different because of this, or I'm different because of this. So, what kind of things or issues are you guys seeing that are affecting our teenagers?
I get that question from the guy at church to podcast to parents on the phone, right? So I've really just tried to distill it down to this one question that I think every single teenager tries to answer, probably between the age of 12 and take it all the way to 20. And I'm 43, and I still kind of ask myself this question, and it's who am I? Uh, and we come out of the womb trying to answer this one question, right? And so I think kids have so many different voices in their head. If we thought about it like coding a computer or a program or something like that, all these different source codes are coming in and they're incongruent and the software is not working. And so what says to go up makes you go down, and what says to go right makes you go left. And kids just can't cope. And so and they don't have the mechanisms to be able to do that. And so they go to their phone, they go to drugs, they go to porn, they go to self-harm, and it's life. Since you can't answer that question, who am I? Therefore, life really doesn't have meaning, right? And so suicide rates are exploding because, well, there's no purpose, there's no value, there's no anchor in the ground. And so life is just kind of meaningless. And so why not just end it, right? And so I think from that kind of all other things spur from it. And that's the one question we try to ask. And I think that's why faith is important to us because faith helps answer that question of creation, of why I'm here. What in the world is my purpose? You know, what's ahead of me? What's my future hope? So we can do that partly with counseling and partly with faith and Christianity.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, the one thing that I can get from that is absolutely we need to know where we come from, right? And we need to know where we're going. We need to know what this life has in store for us. And it's all laid out there, right? It's all laid out in the Bible and stuff, right? But you mentioned that the common question for a lot of these teens is who am I? And so there's a lot of issues I feel around identity, right? And for teens, and they have to fit a certain mold. They have to fit a certain identity. They almost have to have something going on with their mental health to fit in with others. They almost have to have something going on with their gender identity to fit in with others, right? To be accepted, to be part of other kids and whatnot. And but then they go through this process, like you mentioned, right, to where they don't know how to cope with it. They're getting all these voices and all this influence from all over the place, right? They don't want to listen to the influence of their parents. They don't want to listen to the good influence. They want influence of their peers more so than anyone else, or from these influencers online and whatnot, leading to more identity problems, leading to more this, that, and the other, which then ultimately leads to the teen suicide, you know, numbers exploding and going up because there's just so much confusion and there's so much like anger and there's so much frustration of everything and nothing makes sense and no one understands me and kind of thing. So what are some things outside of faith, if you're thinking from like a more of a clinical perspective while also
Yeah.
mixing in the faith, but how can we work against some of those things that are bogging down our teens, especially when it comes to the identity, especially when it comes to all these outside influences and voices that are attacking them?
Yeah, I'm a big CBT practitioner, cognitive behavioral therapy, and really simply our cognitions, the way we think about ourselves, the world around us affects our behavior. I think therefore I am. And so really just creating a list of positive and negative beliefs about self, right? And so, I'm 6'4", 215 pounds, pretty athletic. I look in the mirror sometimes and I go, dude, you're fat and old, right? I ask 10 people, would they say I'm fat and old? Probably not. But that's the rhetoric that's in my head. And I have to reframe that every single day. Or else I'll sit on the couch and eat Cheetos, right? And so getting our kids to say, their belief about self is no one loves me. No one cares about me. No one blah 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 blah, right? And so my job is to take that thought I'm a big fan of Adler and Freud and some of the OG guys that started the psychological, profession and revolution there. And I'll reframe that thought and like, okay, what is true? But I also want to know where that thought came from, right? That's a family systems thinking, that's Adlerian kind of thing, and work my way back, right? And so everyone hates me or no one loves me, right? Those are huge platitudes. You can't walk into the grocery store, the gas station, the airport, and receive any kind of relationship or love because everyone is absolute. And I try to just distill that down. So who is everyone really when they're making that statement, right? And so we kind of work back and I'll ask the kid, now your parents divorced. Is everyone maybe just two people? Right? And then no, it's just one. I hate dad because dad left, right? Dad abandoned me. Dad doesn't care anymore. Dad, right? And so now I have a whole, 6 weeks worth of work to do to help that young lady or that young man understand it's not everyone, this one little thorn in your side. It's not everyone, it's one person. And that's much easier to resolve than everyone, right? Because we know that's false. And so we try to take that thought captive and then make it a truism. And then now what does it mean for that to be true? And you have to put a name to it. And then you have to do repentance and forgiveness to help a kid walk through that. And at the end of the day, um, they're hopefully reframing that to think, my dad hurt me, but I can still receive love and have healthy relationships.
Yeah, it's it's hard for even adults to think about that. So just imagining it for a teenager to how a teenager can process that at that level can be really difficult. But there's a part of all of us, right? And I think not just teens, but I think every person, right? We want to find someone to blame, right? We want to find
Yeah,
someone to blame for our problems. We don't want to accept the problems, or we want, or especially teens, right? They want to say, "Oh, well, this person made me." I hear it all the time. I work in mental health and behavioral health all the time. So the teens I always work with, they're always like, "Oh, well, this person made me, or this person did this, or this person did that, or this person did that." Um, Rarely do they recognize, the part that they had in it, the part that they're doing, and the impact of what they're doing had on the whole situation, right? But we're so quick to blame, right? And so with these teenagers, they're really wanting to blame someone. They don't. I feel like a lot of our teens now they really lack that sense of self accountability. And so how do you work through that? Just a teen who's just dead set on just well, it's their problem. It's not my problem. It's someone else's problem. This person did that to me, so it's their fault because I do this because of that. And they just have something for every single thing that comes out of
yeah.
their mouth is points to someone, but nothing ever points to themselves.
think that's I think that's the funnest part of the job sometime. If we go back to the garden and Adam and Eve and God approaches Adam and he goes, "She gave it to me," right? Automatically from the garden we see this sort of abdication of responsibility for man. And our teenagers are no different, right? And so I think it's just reflecting back to them the thoughts and the behaviors and catching them in their disassociative like thinking patterns, right? I think a lot of our kids, it's multifaceted, but I think in the beginning it's really just building rapport with them and reflecting back to them their story. And I love using the 12 steps even with pure mental health type stuff. Is okay, let's look at all the people who wronged you. Let's do step 4, right? And let's just chart it all out. Let's go with your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your uncle, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your teacher, your football coach. Let's go through and make a list of all the people who wronged you, right? And let's fill out these little columns. And there's one little column in there that says, what was your part? Um, and those are life-changing moments when I'm able to say, oh, yeah, I got beat up because I ran my mouth. Oh, she cheated on me because I cheated on her first. Or just fill in the blank. And I've gone through hundreds of these with men and teenagers and just watch the light bulbs come on and sort of a conviction. And that's the cool part is allowing the Holy Spirit to be conviction when you go through these things and you kind of put it up on the wall. It's really good to get it out of your head and to get it up on the wall. And then step five is right, confess that really to one another. And, James says we do that, we are healed. So it's super important for that.
No, I think that's a really cool exercise. Because we don't want to do that as humans, right? That's just our nature. We don't want to we don't want to admit our wrongs. It can be really hard to admit our wrongs. And so, kind of looking forward here, or for parents who maybe have a teen they're struggling with, or maybe are really struggling with their own at home themselves. What kind of changes should parents be looking out for? Any warning signs or distress signs from their teens that they should be looking out for that may signal that they need some extra help, they need some extra support.
Yeah. So I identify change like in the therapy session with clients, and we kind of go through this exercise and we kind of distill this word down is change equals just something different, right? Like I don't want to be in rehab. I don't want to be addicted. I don't want to cut myself. I don't, so what does change look like? Well, it's just something different. And I think, that's the litmus test or the canary in the coal mine is what is different, right? And those 4 or 5 buckets is who, what, when, where, why, right? Like what or people, places, and things. And so, what is different about the people they're hanging out with, right? Were they in band and, that was their life, 10, 11, 12, 13, and all of a sudden at 14, there's just something categorically different about who they're hanging out with. And maybe it's you move schools or, a family member dies. Like when you put all the little place cards on the wall or the kaleidoscope of people, who's different? Because that'll be a litmus test of kind of what's going on in our life. We always say, or I always tell our kids, like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. Or you're the sum of the 10 people you hang out with, which way you phrase it. So number one is people. Number two is places. If those places change from the gym or the band hall or the chess club, to just different, right? Is it parks and malls and just like where there's nothing really formidable for people to do, just to hang out? That's also kind of some of our kids stop going to places, right? They stop going to the gym, they stop going to the field, they stop going to church. So whether it's a start or a stop into another place, I pay attention, right? And so things, I like to work out and I like to play guitar. And if I don't do either of those, man, I'm probably going to get in trouble because it takes up a lot of my time. And so, not that I have a ton of free time with 3 kids and a business and all
Right.
the things, right? But it would lead to some sort of depravity if I didn't do those two things. And so, paying attention to the things that our kids are doing. If they're spending 8 hours a day on video games, there's probably an issue, right? So it's either a thing that they're investing in or a thing that they're withdrawing from, just to pay attention of what's physically in their hand at all times.
Yeah, I think that's why it's important, to be involved in our kids' lives, right? To make sure that we know that those things, so we can catch them, right? Because it's very easy as our kids get older to kind of check out a little bit more as parents, and to kind of let them have more and more independence and not be as hands on and involved with them, because we don't want to be overbearing, we don't want to embarrass them, we don't want to take away from their independence. We don't want to take away from their growth, right? But there's a part of that where you got to walk that like fine line, right? And some of it you have to say, well, I don't care if I'm overbearing, if I'm too much in your business, kind of thing, because until you're out of my house, my business, your business is my business, kind of thing.
It's
Um,
literally my job.
yeah, it's literally my job. Like it's literally what I don't get paid for and pay for every single day. So I'm investing a lot of money into this situation here. I'm gonna know what's going on, kind of thing. And so it's like it's one of those catch 22s because if you disengage too much, then kids will go and do what kids will do. But then if they know that there's a pressure there, there's a watch there, and they know that they're gonna have to, be held accountable for their actions, for their choices that they make, because you're gonna know one way or the other, then I think that's a natural deterrent, right? That could be a very natural deterrent because they're like, oh, well, if I go here, dad has my location and he knows exactly where I'm at. He knows exactly who I'm with because I have to tell him who I'm with at all times. And I've always had to do that kind of thing. And, my friends say my dad's overbearing. So maybe I don't want to hang out with those friends because I don't want to have to tell them my dad needs me to text him and call him and blah, 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 blah. So I'm just not going to go there, do that thing because that's just too much work for me kind of thing. Right. So it can be a natural deterrent at the end of the day. And that's not the worst thing that can happen. It's good to be involved in your kids' lives. It's good to know these things and to catch them before they happen, right? And to be able to have those open lines of communication, especially as they get older, especially as they become teenagers, to have those open communication lines from when they're young, so that they know that you're involved, that you care, that you have their back, and that you're part of the solution. You're not part of their problem, things like that. So, uh, I guess let's talk a little bit more about Clearfork Academy in the whole. What are some of the really cool things you've seen come out of working with the different teens and families, and what are some of your most rewarding, your most memorable like success stories?
Man. So it's, it's always the one or twos that come back and melt your heart, right? It's the nine who are ungrateful or get overlooked, but it's always the one that comes back and shines their story. And so I think legacy is one of our core values and one of the biggest kind of, I don't know, trophies, or if you will, virtual trophies or metaphorical trophies is kids that have graduated our program, gone and finished high school, and now have come back and worked for us. So we've had three or four or five, in the last 8 years that come back, and it's just been kind of staples for us. And that is a really cool win that we changed their life. They're back engaged with us and providing the same level of engagement that they received. And so we've had one of the stories that I always tell is just there's this kid. He's a big kid. He was angry every single day. And at day 74, like we had no progress with this kid. Just he for 74 days he wanted to fight, he wanted to be angry, he wanted to leave, he wanted to do everything but figure out, in his words, what the F is wrong with me. And so I did our night shift one night, and just he was having an issue, couldn't go to bed, couldn't rest, blah blah blah. And I was like, you know, he was like, I just wish God would F and tell me what's wrong with me. And so I was like, man, well let's ask him. Um, you've done everything else. You said you did the steps, you said they didn't work. You did counseling, you said it didn't work. You worked out and you said it didn't. We did all of these things. Let's do the last thing that we can offer you. And at day 74, we sat, we counseled, I prayed for him, and he went to bed that night and he's like, God, I effing hate my life. And I'm, like cleaning this up a little bit because we have a 17-year-old just word vomiting
Yeah.
to a God of his own understanding, which he had really no concept of. Show me what the F is wrong with me. He went to bed that night, woke up in the middle of the night with night terrors, and remembering from seventh to eighth and into his ninth grade year, when he got off the bus and walked home, the neighbor would pull him into his house and molest him. And we sat in his floor the very next morning as he told me those stories, and we cried together. And so the next 2 weeks, we're able to put the pieces back together, and now everything made sense in his life. But he had suppressed it, he had hidden it, he had not told anyone. And man, in one moment, in one prayer, in one night, this young man's life kind of made sense. And so that question of who am I now was sort of revealed. And he understood that God heard him. He understood that God cared. He understood that he was in a place of safety instead of trying to fight everybody. Man, it was a cool moment. Those happen every single week, every single month. You know, all the way up to like 3 months ago, I was laying in the driveway with a girl who was trying to run away from one of our programs. She was just not feeling safe. Same situation as this young man I just told you. And we were just talk through it, you know. She was laying in the driveway so the next car would run over her or something, you know, like it just did not make sense. And I laid down there with her and helped answer that question of who am I? I'm worth it, right? Like I'm somebody's daughter, I'm somebody's friend, I'm somebody's aunt maybe one day. And so those are cool. I mean, we just have, we have 5,000 kids come through in the last 8 years. So a lot of stories.
Yeah, that's really cool. Those James 1:5 moments, if you lack wisdom, ask, and it'll be given to you. All you have to do is ask. Ask in faith and trust that you're gonna receive, and you'll receive. And it's really cool when it happens, and when it comes to fruition for you and for these kids especially, right? Because they're like we mentioned at the very beginning, right? A lot of this comes back to identity and who am I? What am I? Where am I going? What have I come from? Kind of thing. And our kids, they go through a lot. Like that boy you're mentioning here, right? Like he suppressed that for years. He suppressed that for 3, 4 years at that point. Was something that happened to him every day over the span of multiple years, and he was just getting hurt, kind of thing. And I wouldn't want to talk about that with a bunch of strangers after a couple months either. It would really have to get to me, but, that's also really cool at the same time because that's that's the weight of the spirit, weighing on his soul, just saying, "Come on, get it out, get it out, get it out. You can do it. You can do it.
Hmm.
That's what it is, right?" And we as humans, we know when these things are bogging us down, and we know when they're affecting us. We know what it is, right? It doesn't take too much of a self-assessment to know where we're messing up in life, to know where we're struggling on the day-to-day basis, whether we're struggling with addiction of some kind, or whether we're struggling with not doing the things that we love to do, or whether we're struggling with our habits, our routines, things like that. We stop doing something. It doesn't take too much self-reflection. It just takes a little bit of self-reflection, and we're like, "Oh, that's what it is right now. That's why I'm feeling off." For you, it would be, I haven't worked out in a couple days. That's why I'm feeling off. Or man, I haven't played my guitar in weeks. I've just been bogged down with work, kind of thing, and that's why I haven't been feeling myself. And for myself, it'd be like, oh, when's the last time I got behind the microphone and had a great conversation with someone? Or when's the last time, I dove really deep into a video game that I really enjoy playing, kind of thing? Or when's the last time that I did this, that, or the other kind of thing? My little core set of hobbies. It's probably why I'm feeling off. It's probably why I'm feeling overwhelmed right now because I'm not focused. I'm not doing those really basic things. Uh, and we have to do those basic things with our faith too, right? Oh, I feel like I haven't been getting answers to my prayers. Or I feel like I haven't been getting, things aren't going right for me. Things aren't going well for me, and they're not making sense, and I'm stressed or I'm overwhelmed or all these things, and we have to do that evaluation. Okay, when's the last time you prayed? Oh, maybe it's been a little bit. When's the last time you read scriptures? Oh, it's been a little bit. Um, kind of thing, and we get off course very easily, and that's just life. We get off course very easily in life.
Yep, yep.
Well, I guess, is there anything else that before we wrap this thing up? The last little part of the podcast here is the dad zone. But is there anything else when it comes to Clearfork Academy, or when it comes to the kids and the issues and things that walk through those doors on a regular basis, that you want to mention about right here, the last couple of minutes before we start to wrap this thing up?
Yeah, I just, it's a call to families and dads, right? Like, don't wait. Don't feel like you're the only person. The first thing we hear from families when we put them into a room is like, oh my God, you're struggling with the same thing. I thought I was the only one. We've been putting this off. We've been putting this off. We thought we could fix it on our own. And so don't wait, right? Like, I've got a book on Amazon, My Kid, My Crisis. Like, I bet one of your stories is in there. And So grab it, read it, reach out. Like, don't wait, right? Like, that's just it. Don't wait. Whether it's a tiny little thing or you're sitting in the ER, take some action.
Yeah, 100%. Love that because and we're men, right? We're that's what we're good at, right? We're good at taking that action. We're good at finding the solutions. We're good at creating the solutions. We're good at executing the solutions as they are. And so yeah, don't wait. Speaking of not waiting, are you ready to jump into the dad zone?
Do it.
Let's do it. All right. So the dad zone has something that I've been told by many listeners. This is their favorite part of the podcast. I've been told some people skip to this part of the podcast just to enjoy it because it's their favorite part. So to each their own. Hey, more listens the better. That's fine. I appreciate it nonetheless. But the dad zone is designed for myself and for my guests to be able to kind of bring it back down. Sometimes we get deep. Sometimes it gets intense. Sometimes we get a little heavy. So nice, fun, lighthearted way to end the show. So first question here in the dad zone, and it's the most important question in the dad zone here. So we start off hot. Does pineapple go on pizza?
Yes.
Yes. That's a Texas thing?
I don't know. It's great.
What kind of things do they put on pizza in Texas? Do they put brisket on pizza?
I have had brisket pizza.
Nice. Sounds
Yeah.
delicious.
Yeah.
I'd be down. I'm sold. I'm moving to
Any
Texas.
kind of meat or, yeah, it's great.
I love that. Uh, if you could invite three people to a dinner party, dead or alive, who would they be?
Gosh. Wow. I'm going to say my mom's dad, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I'm just going to be real cliche here. Gosh, who'd be the third one? I don't know.
It's okay to throw apostles in there. It's okay to
Well,
throw the
like
Bible
Jesus
in
is
there.
like, I'm trying to
It's
avoid like,
okay. It's okay. It's okay if
Matthew,
you
Mark,
do.
Luke, John, right?
Right.
Uh,
I'm gonna
uh,
pick up Matthew, Mark, and Luke, not John.
yeah,
Don't like that guy. Just kidding.
yeah. I mean, let's just pick somebody from the New Testament, right? Like just anybody in the New Testament. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that'd be fun.
Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. Those New Testament, figureheads for sure. Would love those guys. What is your guilty pleasure food?
I think we talked. Well, yeah, it's got to be pizza. It's got to be just a whole freaking pizza.
A nice little carbo load
Yeah.
after a long week.
Yep.
I like it. And then if you could offer, this is the last question in the dad zone. Some people say this is the most important one. I think it's the pineapple on pizza, but could be wrong. If you could give one piece of advice to a young dad who's just starting out his fatherhood journey, and by young I mean 18 to 22 years old, what is one piece of advice that you would offer that young dad just starting out his fatherhood journey?
Man, how do you spell love? Time. That's really it. Like the kids aren't gonna remember the new sneakers. They're not gonna remember the new bike. They're gonna remember how you ran with them, ran beside them, or played ball with them in those sneakers. They're gonna remember the bike rides, not the bike. They're gonna remember the people they're around, and that's you. And I think you have one responsibility and God's gifted you with that kid, and that is to help them find their creative design, to help them answer that question, who am I?
I love that. I love that. Well, for Austin, this has been a really cool conversation, really, really unique
Jay,
one.
thank you.
I don't often talk about faith and counseling and how those two things intersect and intertwine, but it's always interesting to mix the two. So I wanted to pull up the site here just as an invitation to those who are thinking this hits them, this finds them, and they're like, maybe I should look into this, maybe I should consider it, kind of thing. This is the website right here, clearforkacademy.com. Couldn't be easier to find. Clearforkacademy.com. Very easy to find. On here, you can learn more about the mission, programs, how they're transforming lives through faith, structure, and care. So if you're a parent or an educator seeking support, this may be a great place to start and a great place to refer someone to. So with that, and it's really cool because you guys accept people from all over the country. It sounds like kids from all over the country. So it's not just a Texas thing. Whether you're in Washington, Delaware, I heard there's only like 10 people that live in Delaware because there's only 3 counties, so I don't know. Um, Something like that, but wherever you're at, if wherever this is, look into this. It could be the answer that you've been praying for. Um, right here. And then with that, to the listeners, make sure you guys do the things you can do to support the podcast. You're listening to a podcast, you know what to do. I say it every episode. Go like, follow, subscribe. Um, leave comments, engage with the content on Instagram and YouTube, and wherever you're interacting and listening to the podcast. There's a way to interact. Do it. Leave 5 stars, leave a review, do all the things that show your love and support for the podcast. Make sure you share it with a friend. If you know someone that this episode's like, that's not really affecting me. It was a good episode, but this would really help my boy over here. This would really help my friend's mom over here. This would really help so and so. Send it to them. It may be exactly what they're praying for, exactly what they're hoping for. So send it. Don't be afraid. Send a podcast to a friend. That's how you show your love. People love when you send them a good podcast. So with that, until next time, we'll catch you right here on the Young Dad Podcast.